So, what if that ringing in your ears isn't really a sound at all? Today, we are diving deep into the mystery of tinnitus. We're going to uncover why it happens, and more importantly, how the real source of the problem, well, it might not be your ears. It might just be your brain.
All right, let's start with a little thought experiment. What do you think is the quietest place on Earth? Maybe it's one of those anechoic chambers, a room so perfectly soundproof you can actually hear your own blood flowing. Or, I don't know, maybe a cave buried miles underground, totally cut off from everything.
Well, the answer might actually surprise you. Because for a whole lot of people, the quietest place they can ever find is actually outside their own head. Real, true silence might be something we can never really find within ourselves. And look, this isn't just some philosophical idea. Get this. Back in 1953, a really groundbreaking experiment put people with perfectly normal hearing into a totally soundproof room. Their only instruction? Just listen. An incredible 94% of them reported hearing a phantom ringing or buzzing sound, which, yeah, sounds a lot like tinnitus.
So that brings us to the central mystery, right? If almost everybody has this internal signal, this background noise, why does it become a debilitating problem for some people while most of us don't even notice it's there? That is the big question we're going to tackle. To figure that out, we've got to start with the basics of how we hear. I mean, how does a simple vibration in the air become a rich, meaningful sound inside our brain? Let's trace that incredible journey, step by step.
Okay, so it all kicks off with our outer ear. It acts kind of like a funnel, right? It gathers up all those sound waves and channels them down the ear canal. And at the very end of that tunnel is the eardrum, this super thin membrane that starts to vibrate the second those sound waves hit it. From there, those vibrations get passed into the middle ear, and this is where things get really cool. They're amplified by this tiny chain of 3 little bones. And fun fact, the malleus, incus, and stapes are literally the smallest bones in your entire body, and they work together like a perfect little mechanical amplifier. So that final little bone pushes on the cochlea, which is this amazing snail-shaped organ that's filled with fluid. This creates waves inside it, and the cochlea itself is organized just like a piano keyboard. High-frequency sounds get processed at one end, and low-frequency sounds at the other. It's wild! And now for the real magic trick. As those fluid waves ripple through the cochlea, they bend thousands of these tiny microscopic hair cells. You can see them right here. This physical bending is the moment. It's where the mechanical energy of the sound wave finally gets converted into an electrical signal that our brain can actually understand. Okay, so the ear has done its job. It's created an electrical signal. But honestly, that signal is totally meaningless until it's interpreted. And now we get to the most important part of this whole story, the brain, and what you can think of as its powerful security system that decides what we actually get to hear. So that electrical signal from the cochlea, it starts this really complex journey up the auditory pathway. It passes through multiple relay stations, different processing centers, all before it ever reaches our conscious awareness. But here's the amazing part. We don't consciously hear all of that information, not even close. Our brain is constantly running this powerful subconscious background check, using these incredible filters to scan for any patterns that might be important. I mean, think about it. You can be in a super crowded, noisy room, and your brain will instantly pick out the sound of your own name. A parent can sleep right through a passing train, but they'll bolt awake the second their baby makes a tiny peep. This filtering system is a survival tool, really. It's designed to highlight anything that could be a threat, or just anything that really matters to us. Okay, so keeping that idea of a brain filter in mind, let's go back to that soundproof room. Let's revisit that universal ghost signal that it seems like almost everyone has. The experiment's design was just beautiful in its simplicity. They took 80 people, all with normal hearing, put them in a room designed to be completely, utterly silent, and they gave them just one instruction: listen. And the result? It was just astonishing. 94% of them heard something. They heard the sound of their own hearing system just humming away in the background.
So here's the big takeaway. This changes everything. Tinnitus isn't the presence of some phantom sound. It's the brain suddenly paying attention to the normal baseline electrical activity of the hearing system that's been there all along. The signal isn't new, the brain's focus on it is.
And that brings us right to the modern scientific explanation for why that focus becomes such a problem. It's a model that shows how a totally harmless background signal can get mistakenly flagged as a threat, turning into an alarm that just refuses to shut off.
So let's walk through this vicious cycle. First, the brain just detects that normal background signal, simple enough. But then, for some reason, maybe stress, maybe some minor hearing damage, it makes a mistake. It links that neutral sound to something negative. This triggers the limbic system, that's the brain's emotion center, and suddenly you feel annoyed or anxious. That, in turn, kicks on our fight or flight response. And here is the absolute key. That strong emotional reaction screams back to the brain's filters, hey, this signal is important, it's a threat. So the brain listens even harder and the cycle gets locked in.
You can really see here how that simple auditory signal gets trapped in this feedback loop between our hearing, our emotions, and our body's stress response. It's like a faulty smoke detector that goes off. But instead of calmly checking for a fire, we panic, which convinces the alarm system that there must be a real 5-alarm emergency, making it shriek even louder.
But here's the hopeful part, and it's really hopeful. If the brain can learn to have this negative reaction, it can also be trained to unlearn it. The solution isn't about getting rid of the sound. It's about breaking that cycle and teaching the brain to just ignore it. And there's a word for that: habituation. Now, it's absolutely true that an initial trigger, like the kind of hearing damage you can see on the right, might be what first gets the brain's attention. But the thing that makes the tinnitus persist and become a real problem isn't the state of the ear. It's the brain's learned, conditioned reaction to that signal. And that is the whole idea behind something called tinnitus retraining therapy. The goal is not to mask the sound with something louder. Instead, it introduces a neutral, low-level sound to help the brain find what's called the mixing point. That's the sweet spot where the tinnitus is still there, sure, but it just blends into the background noise, and it loses its power as a perceived threat.
And all of this leads to the ultimate goal, habituation. It's something your brain is doing for you constantly without you even realizing it. It's the reason you don't notice the hum of your refrigerator or the feeling of your watch on your wrist. Your brain has already learned that those signals are harmless, and it just filters them out. The whole goal is to get the brain to reclassify the tinnitus signal and put it in that same boring and irrelevant category.
So in the end, the mystery isn't really a phantom sound, but a real signal that the brain's overzealous security system has mistaken for an intruder. And that leaves us with this final, really powerful idea. What if the solution isn't a desperate search for silence, but simply about teaching our own internal security system that it's safe to finally stand down?